One of the Premier League's greatest wingers ever, Eden Hazard, has retired at the age of 32. What an announcement that was made. Shocked, actually. I thought maybe you might have a few more, maybe another year in him. Liam, Mr. Chelsea, how did you feel when you saw that tweet that Eden Hazard has indeed retired from football?
More sadness than shock, because it's been going this way for 4 years, hasn't it? You could argue that he retired the day he left Chelsea in terms of the Eden Hazard that we were used to seeing. It's been really sad to watch his body break down and continually let him down over 4 years at Madrid, particularly since I know, and he often spoke about what a dream that move was for him. But it means that now we get to look back at the videos of the goals and the dribbles and the tricks, and I think remember him for the best version of himself and not the version that we've seen, or more often not seen, in the last couple of years.
Yeah, Michael, I mean, what a player. A player that lit up the Premier League, also lit up the French League. And I guess Real Madrid probably, and we'll come on to this a little later on, Real Madrid probably wasn't the best of Hazard, but so many other beautiful memories of such a wonderful winger.
Yeah, definitely. He feels like a very Premier League player to me, in the same way that Thierry Henry did, in the sense that I think unquestionably English football got to see his best years. I wouldn't say he had that much impact on the Champions League, considering his impact at Chelsea on a consistent basis. So yeah, he feels to me like one of the kind of purest Premier League players out there, and someone who I think was the best player in the league in three separate seasons. 2014-15, he won the Player of the Year unanimously, I think the best player of that season. 2016-17, the award went to Kante, I think partly because he'd been so influential for two title winners in a row. But Hazard won Chelsea's Player of the Season award. There was no doubt from those who watched Chelsea week in, week out, who the best player was. And I think even 2018-19, his last season at Chelsea, he was putting up some just incredible numbers, and was fantastic in that League Cup final that Chelsea lost on penalties, brilliant in the Europa League final as well. For me, yeah, there aren't too many players who've been the best player in the league in three separate seasons. Probably just him and Henry, I would say. But he was, a wonderful player.
Yeah, Liam, let's talk about him coming to Chelsea. I wouldn't say little was known of him. He was doing bits in France already. I look at this tweet we've got here from, back in 2012, I think it was. I'm signing for the Champions League winner. When you lot saw that, what was going through your mind about the potential of this player coming to you, and who else was looking at him as well?
It was like a social media event before the age of regular social media events in football, if that makes sense. There'd been 18 months of increasing speculation about where Eden Hazard would go, because it was so obvious that he was the outstanding young player in Europe and he was being courted by all of the major European clubs. It felt like every single week there was a different story, sometimes with a Hazard quote suggesting he might go to Italy or to Spain or to some of the Premier League giants. And it looked for a lot of that season, which was a magnificent one for Hazard in France, winning the double with Lille and being comfortably the best player in that league. It looked for a lot of it like Chelsea were completely out of the race, because 2011-12 was a car crash, most of it for Chelsea. And then they salvage it in the most glorious way possible with this Champions League win. And there's very little doubt, when you look at the phrasing of that tweet, that if Chelsea hadn't won the Champions League in such crazy, unlikely fashion in Munich, that Eden Hazard probably would have ended up going somewhere else. I think Champions League football was very important to him at that point. And it was a massive, massive signing for Chelsea. I think one of their most important signings this century, because it really went on to define the club for the next 7 years and the way that they built their attacks.
But yeah, I mean, the one thing you say about him in terms of, his Premier League contribution, he was never quite a prolific goal scorer. His numbers never really went to the kind of 20 a season level where I think you kind of sit up and say this is a fantastic goal scorer. But as a dribbler and as a passer, he was very, very consistent. And beyond that, was just a fantastic entertainer as well. I mean, one of the players I would say who most got more appreciation from when you saw him live rather than on television, because he was so small, so strong, took a lot of kicks, wasn't a diver, wasn't a whinger, would kind of take the kicks and get up and get on with it. And I think people do appreciate that in a player.
Yeah, for sure. Something we were talking about earlier is one of the words I picked out, especially a sentence I picked out from his social media, was that I have played and had fun on many pitches around the world. I mean, he really is the epitome of a player that played with a smile on his face. Forget the pressures of being a modern footballer. He just wanted to entertain globally. He, on that pitch, it was so on it and so focused. You must have felt that as Chelsea fans. He
was a natural showman. And really a throwback, I think, in some senses to kind of the great flair players of the 90s. If you saw him off the pitch, if you saw him around Chelsea training ground, as I did when I went there for press conferences, or just in mix zones or things like that, he always had a cheeky grin on his face. He always had kind of wink in his eye, and he carried that same feel onto the pitch. And you always felt that fun was his priority, and occasionally that was to Chelsea's detriment, because I think, you know, he could at times have been more driven. He could have been more selfish as a player as well. There were lots of times where, you know, Michael mentioned he was more of a scorer of great goals than a great goal scorer, and I think partly that was because he didn't have that thing in his brain that some of the great players have, where right, let's get 2, let's get 3. You know, let's really push and see how far we can go with this. He was content with getting 1 goal or 1 assist and being, by universal acclaim in the stadium, the best player on the pitch. That was enough for him, and he'd go home happy, and then probably not train very much during the week and do the same the following weekend. That was just the way Hazard was, and I think that I always found there was something very relatable about that. You know, he wasn't this kind of robotic, super determined, unwavering athlete. He certainly didn't have a Cristiano Ronaldo mindset, but he was more of a maverick, and definitely a natural entertainer. Michael, when we think about the greatest Premier League left wingers, Ryan Giggs comes to mind, and Liam and I was actually saying that Cristiano Ronaldo played on that side as well. He has to be ranked as one of the greatest left wingers in the Premier League for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a kind of interesting player. He was an interesting player in terms of his style, because he was, I mean, obviously predominantly cutting inside rather than going down the line like Giggs. As I said before, he wasn't a prolific goal scorer like Ronaldo. He was almost more of a creative dribbler, I suppose. I'd kind of liken him in a sense to Robert Pires as being a bit of an all-rounder, not quite a pure goal scorer or a pure creator or pure dribbler, but could do a bit of everything. And yeah, like I say, for me, 3 separate seasons he was the best player in the league, and that is very, very rare.
Where would you rank him as the best Premier League wingers out there?
It's really hard. I think the one thing he has, as Michael said, that Henry had as well, that you can sometimes count against Ronaldo, is that it's clear with Henry and with Hazard that their best years, all of their best years, were in the Premier League, whereas Ronaldo obviously went to another level at Real Madrid. I think he was in the top 2 or 3 players in the Premier League every single season, bar 2015-16. And I think that's enough to put you know, on the podium of left wingers in the Premier League era. I would say I would probably have him second behind Ronaldo in terms of peak level. But he was probably at a high level longer than Ronaldo was in the league, if that makes sense.
If you like this video, click subscribe for more content like this. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season to bring you the inside track to the biggest stories in football. If you'd like to listen to the full episodes for free, search the Athletic Football Podcast wherever you get your podcasts from.